Hi everyone, this is Anukriti from the Montessori Factor, and I'm so glad that today Pamela Green from Ananda Montessori has joined us to talk about the topic observation and prepared environment. So, welcome, Pamela.
Thank you very much. It's,
Thank you for taking the time.
this is a topic that is very dear to both of us, and it is not just I think we'll be exploring this in deeper ways, but it's not a topic that is stagnant. It's something that is an active process, and
Right,
it is the most essential one along with the prepared adult.
right. So, yeah, it is a very important topic because it literally forms the backbone of Montessori. Observation is and prepared environment, these two are the backbone of the Montessori method, for lack of a better word. So when we say observation, there's so much more uh, deeper insight into it as to what we are calling observation. So what do you think? What do we observe when we look at a child in the environment doing what they want to do? What do you think that the parents should aim at observing? What should they do?
Well, I always think about preparing to observe as the first thing. So, and when with observation, we observe all the time. We're observing in our lives in every moment. It is something that is natural to us, and yet with Montessori or in any other, if you're practicing mindfulness or anything like that, the practice of observation, one of the beginning aspects of it is how do we bring ourselves to it? And so there could be one experience where it's just coming and sitting in a chair and you open up this book and you are recording. And that is an action that's happening. But the deeper understanding and practice that I know of as observation that's available to anyone who wishes to practice it is in first the ways that we bring ourselves to it. And those can be unique to each of us, such as coming into some quietness, coming into the present moment, coming into a place where we can set aside what came a few moments ago, what our life was, and enter into, again, the present moment, which in Montessori, if you're in a prepared environment, which we are a part of, we can bring whatever practices help us to come into that state, whether it's breath work, whether it is just taking a moment and again quieting. The other thing that I think is important that I've learned over time is where, if you come into a prepared environment, where do you place yourself?
Mhm.
Where to observe from
Right.
in a physical way. And that is, for me, part of the practice of it. And it's important because if we are observing a child or we are observing anything really, we want to have space between ourselves and that other that we are observing so that we have our experience and we are giving that other being, if we're observing a person or persons, we're giving them space. So those would be two things that I find essential in beginning observation.
Definitely, definitely. I love how you say that even to begin to observe, first we need to prepare ourselves. And what you're essentially saying is that to work on ourselves to really have control over our impulse or the need to or the instinct to really step into something. And an observer really needs to be there as an observer and not the part of the scene. And that's how you emphasize that there needs to be distance between what we are observing versus where we place ourselves, which is so important for people, especially in classroom or they're homeschooling. And when they have to, this brings me to another important point, that observation will not just help the adult to understand what the needs of the child are, what are the interests of the child, what do they respond to, how do they respond to something, and also as to how to prepare the environment, right? So, because there's no preparation of the environment without observation. What would you like to add about preparing the environment using observation?
Well, what you're saying is so true. You know, there are at a non-Montessori, for example, we practice observation. The parents do, or the caregivers, and I do myself. And the questions that come to my mind, or the questions that they ask, especially at the beginning, and I know that you've heard too in your working with others, is what to have in the environment, what to do in the environment, what sometimes almost an over emphasis on the external.
Mm-hmm.
And what we are, what is possible with observation is to be looking at the abilities of a, another, to be viewing a fuller version in a way of the child,
Mm-hmm.
and to be noticing not the just the large detail, but the smallest details. And then we can prepare from seeing those, what is before us and what is being expressed, and what those interests are, what the needs are of the child. And then we're meeting those with the environment. And, you know, it, again, with the small details, we can be looking, for example, sometimes I will have as my observation focus the hands. So observing the hands of the child,
Mm-hmm.
how
So,
they're moving, what the movement of the hands are, what the abilities of the hands are, of the fingers, and then recording those and preparing the environment so that that practice can happen for that child.
right, right, right. This is so important to really see their movements and especially hands. And I love how you say that you look at the hands of the child, which gives us so much information as to what they need or how they're responding to the environment, how they're interacting with the environment. So, how can we observe and yet not judge?
Well, we will. That's to me, that's one thing that I continue to notice in myself, is that that will happen.
Yeah,
And
it's not.
that's, yeah, and so that's why observation is we are looking, we are seeing what's happening externally, what is happening, and then we're also on the inner observation is our feelings and our responses and our thoughts and our maybe our judgments, our own history, things that get awakened in us as we're observing, our assumptions, our expectations, all of those things, which I feel are intended as the part of the practice of observation.
Right, right. I mean, sometimes we tend to be too hard on ourselves that I just want to observe, but I don't want to judge. While we can try, and it's important for audience to know that we can try, but
Mhm.
at the same time, we have a particular upbringing. We come from a different environment. We have our way of perceiving things, and we can assume things. So it's natural to have that incorporated in our observation while we can try and separate it at the same time, not being too hard on ourselves because it's completely natural. When we prepare the environment, we always consider so many things. So when I or you make the observation of the child, right, so we know, we kind of understand what their needs are, we see their movements, we see their interests, we consider the human tendencies that they need to explore, they need to communicate, they need to socialize, they need to, there are so many human tendencies that we need to be considerate of. And the age or stage of the child is a better word, not the age, because um, we have to definitely consider their sensitive period, right? So when we prepare the environment, these are the things which come to my mind. What would you like to add uh, as to what are the points that we need to keep in mind while we prepare an environment?
Well, one of the things that is helpful for me is to use my own feeling state, and to add to that, the what I feel, what I believe is that observation is a full sensory experience. So we can, it's not an isolated process. It's we are there and we're in an experience and we're having a distance, as I talked about, but we can also be, the possibility is that we're fully merged with the environment. So
Mm-hmm.
when I said the feeling part of it, it's important to me because sometimes I will even maybe enter a space that's a prepared environment. It could be mine or others, and I might feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I might feel different things in me. That gives me some feedback too on my observation.
True. That is so true and so important.
And with what you're saying, we have all of this as a observation being the central piece, and the prepared adult as well, and the teachings of Dr. Montessori on the sensitive periods, and all of her all that she wrote about the natural learning of the human being. We can, through observing and through having that bridge of her work, we can then understand what's happening, what we're seeing.
Right, right.
If we're with young children in the early life and we're seeing the sensitive period, which I feel starts prenatally, of order,
Yeah.
and we're seeing that expressed through the child, then we understand what's happening. And in preparing the environment with that in mind, we are bringing care and attention to having sensitivity to that.
Right, right. This is so important, and I love how you put it, because we can have different way of responding to different things, and it's so important for us to um, just be in that space and see how we feel about it, right? And like they say, that children pick on energy the first more than anything else. So yeah, and we also have this very important and very popular notion in Montessori that less is more, and at no point we want to overwhelm the child. While let's just say we put all the activities which are according to child's interests and sensitive periods and human tendencies and everything, but it can still be overwhelming, right? So just giving what is needed and not too much so as to not overwhelm the child, and also less is more, not giving too much at the same time, right? So yeah, what are the things that are an important factor? There are more things which are an important factor of a prepared environment, such as it needs to be dynamic, right? So with the changing needs of the child, it has to be something which is we are able to change, something which caters to the independence of the child. Because if we prepare an environment and the child is really not able to maybe pick that tray because it's too heavy, or it if this is the first time we are offering a tray to a child and it doesn't really have handles or a orientation place as to where to hold it, then we are kind of not setting them up for success, right? So this is the idea about the prepared environment, that it should cater to the needs of the child. It should encourage independence. It should be something which is dynamic. It should be something which is attractive, right? Do you want to add something here? In what are the things that we definitely want to be sure of that are a part of the environment characteristically?
Mhm. Freedom. Freedom and independence are a balance.
Absolutely.
We can't have, we cannot be free unless we have a way and a space to practice whatever it is that we're practicing as a human being.
Right.
And
True.
usually uh, movement,
It should allow.
sound,
Yes.
auditory,
It should
visual.
allow the sensorial experiences, because children are sensory learners. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, and I just feel this goes hand in hand with what you're talking about, because we are a part of the prepared environment, how we are moving,
Yeah.
how what we are modeling, how we are speaking, how we are not, we are speaking with words and we are speaking with our bodies.
Right.
All of those things are most essential.
Right.
And really, I think in the in an expanded sense, observation can be encompassed also in the movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, observation, sitting and observing is of tremendous value, and we can also, um, you know, if people haven't done this yet, as parents, we all know that there are times when we are just standing or we're somewhere and we can practice observation. So to just put that out, that wherever you're at, you can, this we can be observing, we can be outdoors, we can be indoors, we can be observing the child. And that is always the place to come back to when we are considering, as you're talking about, what to have available and what is of importance. But freedom is of, I mean, that has to be hand in hand. And um, if we, just to add to that as an example, if we are seeing abilities in a child, if we're observing these in our own environment, in a Montessori environment, if we are a parent in our own life with our child, if we are observing that our child has an ability and then we are not allowing them to practice that,
Right.
we are creating what I would call dependence.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I like to call them now rituals that happen between the grown up and the child that are specific, they're specifically adult created. And then they are caused because we're not, ob- we may be observing and we may be seeing things, but we're not giving the freedom for the child to practice. And we're becoming the obstacle to the child.
And the growth of the child and making a child dependent on us has its consequences, like you know, the way that in Montessori we work towards developing confidence, self-esteem, is by giving them independence and the freedom to interact with the environment. And their confidence is always based on their own ability to be able to do things, right? And if we become an obstruction to that, then it's not just an obstruction to their independence and freedom, but also an obstruction to them being more confident and having a higher self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's not, and all of those things that happen within us that we observe, if we're having self-awareness, that, I mean, a very uh, concrete example of this would be my child has the ability to walk, and yet I am carrying them because it's faster, because we can get there sooner, because it's easier for me. So what are my motivations? All of those aspects, those to me are part of the inner observer. So
I love the inner observer because that is the most ignored aspect of observation.
yes,
Do you
yeah,
want to add more about that? Because I do understand when you say that we
yeah.
child when they are able to walk, or when we feed the child when they are able to feed themselves, we are becoming an obstruction in their independence, on their path to independence and being a more confident human being. And we miss on that internal observation that we're doing it just to make the process speed up, but there are bigger things at stake because of that. Do you want to add something about the inner observation?
uh, I feel that I know this in myself. I feel that we have, and I really value this in parents that I work with at Ananda in their practice of this. But we have those moments of intuition or of seeing something in ourselves or having awareness in ourselves. And then there comes a moment of choice. What do I want to do when I have this observation in myself?
Right,
That
right.
that is the aspect that is our part. How do I respond to this observation in myself, and realizing, as you say, that it does have impact on not just ourselves, but has impact on relationship that we're having with our child or we're having with other people. And we can, the thing that I sometimes will say is, another example would be if we are speaking for a child who has the ability to speak. And that one I have noticed over the decades that I've been working with parents and families, this still happens. And I believe it comes from our own history of maybe that happening with us. And so we tend to repeat and repeat. And the inner observer coming into those new awarenesses or maybe new perspectives can be, maybe they could feel a little unknown, but those are new doorways that we can enter into, and then we can try new ways. But I always say to the children, and I will say this to the adults as well when I'm with them, because I'm not going to speak in front of the child,
Mhm.
but that when we do something for another person that we have seen that they can do on their own, or they're in the process of that, that we are taking their turn away. With the children, I use that language. With the adults, I use that language, where we're taking their turn away. And that has deep ramifications.
Yeah.
And there are many textures to what those might be. And it's not to put a guilt trip on anybody. It's not that. It's actually great news, because again, if we have that awareness come up, or maybe it is like an Ananda, that's my role, that I've stepped into, is when there's readiness in the adult and it's needed to bring some reflection to that person from my own observation. And if it is, if there's a natural timing that happens, then there is a meeting of that and there's understanding. But we can't, there's not going to be change or or a new way unless it comes from the adult.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And definitely it's not about giving a guilt trip to an adult by giving them this feedback, but then it's about educating them so that it's a win-win situation for the adult and for the child. Right. I do know that in toddler years, because I've been a toddler guide, they do put up a psychological battle that if they are getting the not so needed help, and then when they come to school they don't get it, then there is like a psychological battle and the child is confused, and then they are frustrated, and then the tantrum starts, and then the meltdown comes in picture. So yeah, it does have bigger stakes than they seem to be in the beginning. But yes, it's not about giving a guilt trip to an adult, but definitely about educating them, working together, ensuring that in whatever we do, that the child is getting benefited.
Mhm.
Right. So yeah, this is what I wanted to cover for today's call: the observation and preparing the environment, and how we can, us as a part of the environment, ensure to be someone who is ensuring the encouragement for the child and not becoming an obstruction for the child. So that's it for today, and I hope that we can come together again for another topic to be covered. And thank you again for taking the time and joining me here. Yeah, thank you so much. Such useful insight and some really profound points that you shared. I really appreciate them, and such great examples. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I'll just add, that observation we're talking about with a prepared environment, but we do it everywhere.
We
So
do.
we do it everywhere. We're taking a walk. We can even begin a practice there of observing something, to make it be, to realize that it's a natural experience and it's a possibility for each and every one of us. It is not specific to just Montessorians. It is part of
Our
humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know what you're essentially saying is that observation is not just something which is only Montessori. We use that in Montessori, and it's not something that is restricted to an area where you have the shelves and everything is prepared. But everywhere, whatever, we take the child to a park, we just sit back and observe how they're interacting with that environment, right? So you're right that in Montessori, mostly the prepared environment is kind of mistaken for the shelf area, which is, very spot, very clean, always organized, have only Montessori related and activities there. But you're right that it's a lifestyle and it's a part of humanity and not just uh, a part of Montessori. So thank you for adding that point. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. I look forward to our next conversation.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much. I cannot wait to get together again to learn from the insightful experiences and share some things that I would like to share, and just share this for our audience. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And so where can people find this so they know? Where will people find this, just to give
So
them?
I'm to upload this recording on Facebook and Instagram,
Okay.
and also on my YouTube.
Okay. All right, great. So you can find it there. And I encourage anyone to put in comments, put in questions, put in your own observations. All of those things would be great.
Yes, it will definitely make it more interactive. So yeah, we look forward to any questions that they have, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.